Good evening. Let me welcome you to this evening's presentation of Mango Tree Dialogues. I hope you have had a good day and that you're feeling a little bit more refreshed, probably having gone home and, taken a bath and had your supper and whatever you do around this time of the evening. But it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this evening's presentation. Mango Tree Dialogues is that forum in which we discuss the issues of the day, and there may be just something that we discussed that had been on your mind and that you would really want to have distilled. And we try to do that in this format. Now, we start off with a lighter moment insofar as these things are light. Some people will probably say that, some of these things that you've been calling light are not so light. But anyway, this evening, light, yes, but very important and deep subject of we have entered into the summer, and at this time of the year we tend to get a lot of rains, and when we get these rains, it creates a problem for us. Yes, it does create a problem. Very helpful, of course, because the summer months are so hot that you welcome rain at any time, but it can create another kind of problem, and that is the multiplication of mosquitoes in the environment. And that has become that becomes a very real problem at this time. And so what I want to say to you this evening is that while we enjoy the rain, while we welcome it, let us be very careful with the mosquitoes that will proliferate in the environment. You've got to be very careful that you don't keep any open containers, out in your home, around your home, that catches the water, and then the mosquitoes are able to breed and multiply. You'd want to make sure that, the flower pots and so on do not gather water and allow mosquitoes to breed in them. All right, so that's one concern. You want to protect yourself. There are repellents that can be used. I think you have to be careful about the kind of repellents that you use, because some can be a bit toxic, but there are very good repellents out there that can repel the mosquitoes. And so you want to be very careful of the ones that you use. And another way, of course, is that you keep your body covered up. Wear pants and long sleeves and that sort of thing as much as you can. And if you're able to be in an air conditioning environment, that is helpful too. It's all about really keeping yourself as comfortable as you can, enjoying the weather with the rains and so on, and at the same time, making sure that you protect yourself from these unwelcomed pests that proliferate at this time. All right, what is on my mind? And there's just one thing I'd like to stress at this time that has been on my mind, because all of us, those of us living in the United States and in fact the world, because these coming elections, where America now is, as I keep saying, that we are at a very serious inflection point, and a very critical point. One would say an existential moment. There have been moments in American history where we've had, very critical existential situations. And of course, one of those was the Civil War in the 1800s. Another earlier than that was when the nation was being formed with the colonial war against Britain and the War of Liberation, where America became an independent country. There have been other upheavals that have taken place in the country, and I believe that we are now at another of those very important junctures in the history of this country that we have to be very concerned about where we are as a country and where we want to go in the future. Now, the presidential elections, of course, that are coming up in November of this year are very critical in determining in what direction this country goes. And it is not one that can be taken for granted. I know that, as I have said before on this program, that there are many people that are not engaged, and they're not engaged for many reasons, because people are busy otherwise. But the time will come when they will really get engaged and get concerned about what is taking place. You can rest assured that people are going to really be attuned to what is happening, probably in the next 3 months or so, more deeply than they are now. But for those who are concerned and are examining and evaluating what is taking place at this time, it is a good thing, and that we should do so. You know, last week I spoke about the interest of the business community and the way in which quite a number of business personnel, executives of large companies, what they call Fortune 500 companies, the top of the line companies in the country, some of them have been cozying up to Donald Trump in giving support. And I made the remark then that we have to be very careful. And those who are inclined to do so must be very careful, because they may be looking on one side of the ledger in terms of what Trump can do to their bottom line, you know, with the deregulations, the rollback of what they regard as, you know, hindrances to their own way of life and to their bottom line. They are maybe concerned about tax cuts that can give them an advantage, as he has done in his first term and has promised to do in this term. But that's one way of looking at one part of the ledger, and yet there's another part of the ledger where Trump has promised nothing but mayhem and instability. He has not said that in those terms. He wouldn't say that. But the agenda that is emerging, and there's a document that has been prepared, a 900-page document called Project 2025 by, I think, the Heritage Foundation, that sets out the agenda and what is hoped to be achieved. And that's a matter for another discussion. But I just want us to understand that the Republican Party, and you know, let me back up here a little bit, because I don't know if you can characterize the MAGA movement around Trump, which to me is a kind of shriveled crust of the Republican Party. I don't know if you can speak of that, which is at the forefront, because Trump is leading what they call that MAGA movement, and it is at the forefront of what is taking place in what I would call the so-called Republican Party, because the Republican Party, as it exists today, is not the party of Ronald Reagan. It's not the party of the Bushes. It is not the party of Eisenhower. It's certainly not the party of Lincoln. Many people would not even remember that Lincoln was a Republican. It is a different kind of party today. And that is why I hesitate to even say the Republican Party today, because what we have is a shriveled crust of what could be regarded as Republicanism. The MAGA movement is not the Republican Party. And I make that claim without any equivocation. The Republican Party today, that what is being called the Republican Party today, which essentially is a MAGA movement that has been created by Trump and over which he exercises total dominance, with an agenda that can set this country back another 50 years. It's not the Republican Party. And that is why I hesitate. But for purpose of moving on, I just say the Republican Party, since they are recognized as the party contesting with the Democrats, and they call themselves Republicans, but they are not Republicans. They are just a shriveled crust of wannabe dictators who want to take this country in an undemocratic direction. That's what they are, plain and simple. We don't have to beat around the bush on that. But when you look at what their agenda is and what is taking place, it is a time when everybody has to be concerned. Everybody has to be concerned about the direction. If there's no other time in the history of this country when we have to be concerned about the future direction of this country and what is happening now in the country and what is offered come November 25 or November the 5th, I think it's the 5th of November or the 7th of November, we're having the elections. What is promised on that day, that ballot process, is going to be one of the most critical, that we could ever have. And so what we're looking at then is a situation in which all hands have to be on deck. That every group of citizens need to be engaged. And that's why I spoke about the business community. There's more to be said on that side. But I read an article in the New York Times by the person who is in charge of the Yale Economic Leadership Committee or something like that, Mr. Sonnenfeld. And he was saying that a lot of what people, the support that people think that Trump has from the business class is just myth. He doesn't have the level of support that they think he has. And that is very interesting. And it's something that many of us had suspected anyway, that is not really the case. But the question is, why is it that if they are not going in his direction and they see the danger that he represents, that more of them are not coming out vocally and saying how concerned they are? And to help in a way, to help people to understand the issues and to know that we in the business community stand on the side of freedom and democracy. And that what Trump is offering is totalitarianism and instability that is going to be very injurious to their bottom line. Why don't they be more vocal about this? It's not enough to hide in a boardroom or to hide behind shareholders' interest and all these ways of thinking and say that we cannot speak up because if Trump gets in there, then he's gonna wreak revenge against us. What kind of cowardice is that? But in my view, there's another set of people that are cowards themselves. And I talk about now the church. Because the church is not engaged with all that has been happening, with the rollback of Roe v. Wade and the attack upon women and the kind of misogyny that we see coming from the Republican Party. And what is happening in Republican states with regard to abortion and how they have endangered the lives of women. With all the utterances that have come from Trump about retribution, revenge when he gets back in there, of the agenda that has been planned in that Project 2025 document, and Trump promising that he's going to be a dictator from day one. Where is the voice of the church? Where is the voice of the church? I'm not saying there are some ministers who on a Sunday or even Saturday may speak tangentially to the matter, but you do not get the feeling that there is that engagement on their part, that seriousness on their part to push back against all of these negative things and to help their own congregants to understand what is happening so that they can make their own determination. Where are the voices of the leadership of the churches? The Anglican/Episcopal Church, for example, Bishop Michael Curry. Where is his voice? I haven't heard. I mean, because if they say something, you're going to hear it in the news. Where is the leadership of the Roman Catholic Bishopric Council in America? Where is the leadership of the Methodist Church, the leadership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church? The only vocal ones that you hear are the evangelicals. And the only evangelicals that you hear are those who have already been encrusted in the MAGA movement, the ones who expose Christian nationalism as a way forward. And they're out there spouting this kind of thinking to people. And I don't even hear a pushback from the so-called mainline churches to challenge that sort of thing and to help people to understand that there's another way. If people keep hearing one thing, then just may believe it. Because if so-called sensible people and really intelligent people do not stand up and push back against that narrative, there are many of them who may just accept that as gospel, as the truth. And nothing could be further from the truth. So I'd like this evening to really challenge the churches to begin again to look more deeply at their mission and to ask themselves the critical question, are we failing the American people in this time of critical need? It is not enough to hide behind your pulpit or to hide in your board meetings and to just plan business as usual, preside over budgets. This is a time when you have to stand up and be counted and allow your voice to be heard on this critical matter. Your congregants are depending on you. There ought to be a united coalition, a coalition of interests. And it's not hard to do. We have social media. And that's one of the good things about social media. You can organize a meeting in the quickest time. You can have people come together and hit heads together and come out with something very easily and quickly without any problems at all. But the question is there the will to do that? Is there the will to be so engaged? And what I know is that we cannot continue like it's business as usual. So that's one of the things that has been exercising my mind. But you may say to me, you know, not everybody is brave. Not everybody is going to open their mouth but if you're following the Lord Jesus Christ, I'm not gonna, Jesus was not brave for the sake of being brave. I don't even think that if you ask Jesus if he was brave, that he would say, yes, he was. But you know what he was committed to? The purpose for which he had come into this world. And despite every attempt to dissuade him from exercising that call that he felt he had, as he agonized in the Garden of Gethsemane. In the end, he knew he had to do what he had to do. So it is not about bravery. I'm not asking anybody to be brave or to just go out there, because when people just jump out there as if they're brave, they make a lot of mistakes. So that's what it's about. It is a commitment to a mission, a commitment to what you believe in, a commitment to what is right, to do the right thing as it is called for. And if what is being promised now is not something that gets into the heart of the mission of the church, then I don't know what else is going to do that in this hour. Serious time in which we live. Now, there are some people who say, oh, but if they get involved, they're dabbling in politics. And the church must be what they call apolitical. You're in the world and not of the world. Well, Jesus was in the world, but was he of the world? No. Jesus was in the world, but he challenged principalities and powers. He challenged the religious authorities as much as he challenged that old fox, as he called him, Herod. Apoliticism is a kind of cowardice in a time like this. To say that the church doesn't have any business with politics and that the church should not be engaged with politics, you must just go and preach the gospel and convert souls, while neglecting the social and economic conditions, the political conditions that can cause all kinds of pain in people's lives. The whole matter of social justice, standing up for what you believe to be right, and fighting and advocating for the vulnerable, the weak, and the oppressed in the society. That is the church's mandate. We need to have a prophetic voice at this time, dealing with the problems that we have and that we see coming. It is not enough for us to just sit on the fence and say, oh, the church mustn't be involved in politics, and think that that is right. What if Martin Luther King had thought like that? What if he was just content to remain in his pulpit in Georgia and just preach gentle Jesus, meek and mild? What if he was just prepared to just look at salvation as a personal thing, and that having a relationship with the Lord Jesus as a personal thing? What if he did not see his mission or his belief in Jesus, in the Christ, as a call to address and to engage and to contend with the forces of evil and tyranny that were tearing asunder the American society? It wasn't about him being brave, but he could not sit on the fence in the face of what was happening to the black people in this country and think that that is right and do nothing about it. The prophets of old could not stand when they saw the wrongdoing of the king and the direction in which the nation was going, and not say something about it, even though they had to pay with their lives. Remember when Jeremiah himself was locked away in the dungeons by King Zedekiah? Because the Babylonians were amassing almost on the border of Jerusalem. And he sent for the prophet, is there a word from the Lord? And the prophet told him, yes, there is a word. He told him what the word is. And in the end, you shall be taken into captivity. He didn't like that message. Locked him away in the dungeons. But did that change the situation with Babylon? No. And the long and short of it is that Israel was taken into exile in Babylon. The cream of the crop taken into exile because they refused to listen to the voice of the prophet, which essentially was the voice of God to the nation. So don't come and tell me that you don't want to dabble in politics. It's not dabbling in politics. You're not running for any office. You're not seeking political power. You're challenging the forces of darkness that political power can visit upon the people. That's what you're doing. And you're failing the people whenever you think that you can hide behind these little things and say, boy, you mustn't be involved. You're failing the mission of the church in helping people to understand these issues and to know that there is another way. Right now, most people think that Christian national, well, I shouldn't say most, but many people think that Christian nationalism is the way forward for them. And as I said earlier, we just behave as if, that is a narrative that can go forward because it is not challenged. We don't want to get involved. So I want to call out the church, especially this evening, to do something. Do something. Don't sit on the fence. It's a very uncomfortable place to sit. Get in the game. How long will you continue to halt between two opinions? If you're God to be the God who delivered you from Egypt, who brought you through the wilderness, who sustained you these many years, then follow him. If your God be the gods of Baal or Baal, then follow him. But you cannot halt between two opinions. That was the challenge of Joshua to the Israelites. What is a challenge to the church today? We have to stand up and be counted. The time is now that we are called upon to make our voices known. That is what it's about. And it is time that we stand up and be counted. So that is on my mind. I don't know to what extent it is resting on the minds of others, but that is where we're at. And I hope that we can do something about it. All right. So I hope that that has been helpful. All right, we are moving into a new segment now. We're going to have a discussion at this time. And while my friends connect themselves, we're going to have a discussion at this time, a conversation under the mango tree with regard to a very important subject regarding the presidential debate that is coming up on Thursday of this week. As I said earlier, a very important election, and we're at a very serious inflection point in the country, an existential moment, as some people would call it, and so this debate is attracting the kind of attention that you would expect it to attract. So I'm not surprised really at the buzz that is around this presidential debate, because it's a very important debate. There are many suggestions that have been made as to how the candidates should behave, how they must comport themselves, what Trump should say and do, what Biden should say and do or shouldn't do. And so there's a plethora, let me put it that way, of opinions. And we are going to add to that, I guess, this evening, because we are here. I'd just like to introduce my guests who will be sitting with me under the mango tree. Brian and Carl, these are friends and you know them. And we'd like to welcome them again to this program. And as we discuss this very important subject of the presidential debate and how we view the debate and just exactly what should be the posture going into the debate and the things that need to be said because people need to be informed. This thing is not about entertainment or bombast. It's a very, very serious thing. Issues need to be discussed, but will issues be discussed, especially on one side where, one is that person is just about, noise and tearing things down? Are we going to hear in the midst of all that noise any sensible proposal? These are the things that we want to, that will engage us in this segment. And I'm gonna just again thank my guests for being here. And I'd like to start off by asking Brian to give us a sense of his views of the debate and what I'm sure you have something that you want to say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for asking me to do this podcast again with you and Carl. It's good to see you again.
Yeah,
The
great
last
to see
time
you.
we had a chat was maybe about a month or so ago. But I've been following the conversation with regard to the debates. And I'm kind of one of those people that's in the middle. Like I don't know what to think just yet, right? Because
Uh-huh.
in one hand, you definitely have the opportunity to come out, if I'm, let's say Joe Biden, I could come out and just stand on my issue, stand on my track record. Um, but as we recently discussed in our last meeting, um, the downside of that messaging is it falls short with a lot of people, right? As we mentioned previously, the concept of facts versus feelings
Mhm.
is such a complex situation. A lot of people feel that the economy is not working for them. A lot of people feel that you're in a recession right now. We covered a lot of that with
Oh
our
yeah.
last chat. Um, and because of that reason, if like Biden comes out and he's, talking about the issues and he's, putting feet to the pavement and saying, no, we're gonna make this even better. We're gonna double down on what's been working right. I think that he might lose a lot of folks who are not listening to the facts and looking at the figures objectively right now in June.
Mhm.
Maybe that he could save a lot of that for the second debate, because it'll be a little bit closer to the election. People are a little bit more tuned in, you know. The second side of me is like, let Trump talk. Let him go. Let him sink his own ship, right? Loose lips sink ships. That's what they say, right?
Yeah.
And this is a gentleman that he has no self-control, right? He's going to come out and he's going to come out with the vitriol and the vim and the venom and it's going to sink him. I think there are a lot of people who are hoping that are undecided are hoping that they're going to look at this debate and say, okay, these two have to convince me one side or the other, right? And the fact that Trump does not speak about issues, he does not speak about his policies, and he's terrible on his policies. When you look at his foreign policy, when you look at his immigration policy, when you look at his domestic economic policy, with tariffs and all of this craziness, he's gonna lose a lot of people. I think he's gonna lose a lot of people. And the thing that's crazy about it is it's for him to lose those folks. Joe doesn't necessarily have to convince them, right? I don't think Joe has to necessarily come out and swing for the fences and knock a home run out of the ballpark. I think Joe could get an inside double and come out smelling like roses on the other side because Trump looks that bad, you know. And I think this debate is going to be a preview of the actual crazy that's to come because if Trump loses this debate, it will become even more unhinged because he can't process the thought that he'd lose to Joe in a third debate. He won't be able to handle it. His ego will not give him the opportunity to handle that. So that's where
Well,
I am with.
well, of course, he's not going to think that he lost it.
Well, that's just it. He's already saying, "Oh, Joe's on drugs and all this other
He
nonsense,"
never
right?
loses anything.
Yeah, so.
All right, Carl, let's hear your views.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Raulston, as always. And to have Brian and myself here participate in part of the country debate. So,
Yeah, your audio is coming a little jumbled, Carl.
all right.
Your audio is a little jumbled. It's not clear. So I don't know if you probably need to turn it up a little or is it?
Are you hearing me any better now?
Yeah, that sounds a little better. But if you speak a little bit more uh, louder, then perhaps
Louder.
you may have.
Everyone always says, when they call to speak to me, I apologize for you to wake you when most of the
Yeah.
time that's how I normally speak. But
Yes, you're
can you
hearing it a
hear
little better.
can you hear me a little better? How about
You're
you,
hearing a
Brian?
little better at that tone.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah, coming
Yes.
through. Mhm.
Well, all of what Brian said, first and foremost, it gives me a certain amount of hope. But I'm in a place right now. Currently, as you might not know, Brian, I'm calling and speaking to you from Barbados. So I've had the opportunity while being here to discuss this whole episode of this current coming debate with Joseph Biden, our president, and former President Trump. And everyone is saying, what is happening to the country? What's going on here? We are totally, totally confused. We're absolutely amazed. I cannot believe what we're experiencing and listening to in the news. And I don't think it's only Barbados is feeling that. I think the whole rest of the world is
Mhm.
are on pins and needles as we speak. There is a lot of anxiety out there based
Mhm.
on what's to come. So I really appreciated having that experience. But thinking about what this debate is going to portray between the two gentlemen, I don't have as much hope as I'd like to. And here's where I'm coming from. It appears to me that Teflon Don, no matter what he does or doesn't do, it will not change the needle as far as where his people are concerned. Um, the only thing that I think it can do, where Joe Biden is concerned, it can illustrate Joe Biden in a way of leadership, statesmanship, a person that is knowledgeable and is aware of all what's needed to be done. And he will clearly, obviously, will speak on policies, something what Brian said that Trump never seems to do. But will that be enough is the question, because I see us on a trajectory which is a bit scary and goes without real true explanations of why we're on such a trajectory, of a lack of support as much and enthusiasm as much as I believe that there should be to some degree for Joe Biden. He has done a lot of good things but somehow it seems to have flown over everyone's head.
Mhm.
But, there is such a thing as reality therapy as we get closer to the time period. Each of us have to be in the whole group and make your choices where you have to then ask yourself the question of, is it wise to go for crazy dawn or go with the status quo of what I'm not totally happy, but nevertheless I can feel a little bit assured that at least things might be on the up and up with a former highly experienced senator slash vice president slash president now. I'm just hoping and praying because I am a little bit um, in the dumps, hoping that things and people in general will kind of come to light or get a eureka moment and see the danger and the seriousness of this upcoming debate slash future election. Everything is on the line.
Yeah.
Everything is on the line. And I am I'm hoping that everyone and have a good participation nationally. And I just think that I have a lot of confidence that Joe Biden is going to do what he's been doing for the last umpteen years on the Hill. So this is nothing new for Joe, but it will be for Donald Trump. This is something that, he emotionally takes on the whirlwind in hopes that everyone will see him in a very strong uh, way of being. But I think we've seen enough of that to be able to look through that. So let's hope that there's a moment in this country in the near future from observation of watching these two men that they kind of shed a light that uh, brings more reason to where we ultimately should be going versus where things seems to be leaning toward. So I will try to speak up in this conversation that we're about to partake in. Um, uh, it's a little work for me because I'm not used to speaking so loud, but hey, this is
Yeah,
something.
that's all right. Perhaps if you bring the instrument a little closer to you, you may be able
Yeah,
to
yeah,
and perhaps turn it up. All right. So, but while you do that, let me go to Brian.
sure.
And, Brian, you mentioned that the so the you're suggesting that Biden should not be, at least this is what I hear you saying, that Biden should not be heavy on issues in the
So
debate, but just allow Trump to, you know,
Be
be
Trump.
be Trump. Yeah, yeah.
and, and mess himself up. Eh?
Yeah, so I think there are three topics that Biden should definitely hammer home, right? The first is the COVID response, right? Um, the COVID response will essentially lead into the economy, okay? Because for a lot of people, a lot of financial experts who are saying we're on the cusp of a major recession, and that the United States economy was shrinking, and the inflation and inflation and inflation and inflation. Now, the inflation is directly tied to the tax breaks that he issued under his administration. And
Yes,
they came at the time of a the pandemic. So those two things essentially led to $5 trillion being added to the national debt.
yes, it does.
So then the post recovery of a pandemic, yeah, like you had a lot of people being laid off, you had a lot of shortages in goods and services, because the entire world economy shut down. So that was the bleak times, you know? You can highlight that and say, look, this was under his watch. This is what happened. And a lot of folks that will be tuned in will remember that because they were on those picket lines and those food lines to get food, and water during the pandemic. And
Yes,
then you can then tie in, well, look at where we are now. You know, inflation is cooling off. You know, it's still high, but it's cooling off. We got to finish the job, you know. Like you don't, you know, we started it. We got a good footing. The economy is booming. Yes, inflation is an issue that we want to tackle. Like, yes, you definitely want to um, come out and say that inflation is something that we're going to be putting on the forefront of our 2025 agenda. You know, after that, you have to touch base with regard to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. You have to, you know, because he's losing a lot of folks that are demanding him to call for a ceasefire in this situation. You know, no matter where you stand on that, you know, he has to address it. He has to be strong on it. He has to come out and say, this is what my plan is for that, you know, and this is where we stand as a nation, right? Um, and then last but not least, I think what he has to do is discuss the fact that this guy is a convicted felon. He has to call him out on it. You know, he has to say, listen, do we really want to elect a convicted felon into the highest office of the land? Do we want to have that asterisk in our history books? Like, oh yeah, he was elected president, but he also was a convicted felon. You know, now there are a lot of people will think, well, you know, Joe Biden's the Department of Justice is, you know, politically going after Trump. Like, but that makes no sense. It's like, you know, let's look at the facts. Like, dude, you created your situation. You committed campaign finance law of violations. You committed bank fraud and business fraud. You know, that has nothing to do with me. This is you. This is who you are. You have been embroiled in litigation 3 or 4 thousand times over the course of your entire business career, you know? So how can you sit here and tell me that you're better for the country when you know, titans of industry and all these business leaders are walking away from you because they're like, you know, I may not agree with Biden and his policies, but at least it's stability in the market because that's all they care about is the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Shareholder value. So if I now turn around and vote and back you, you're talking about putting 100% tariffs on goods and services? Like, do you even know how tariffs work? You know, the people pay that, not another country or whatever you believe happens. So that will tip us into a recession and maybe into a depression, if you want to call it that. So I think he has to find the balance in his messaging that says, these are things that are priorities for my administration. We started, we're making progress, but over the arc of history, you know, things happen at a certain speed. Give us 4 more years to finish the job. And then finally, the linchpin of your campaign will be women's rights. You have to come out and say that this individual is going to pass a federal ban on abortions in this country. Okay. And that is something that you have to come out and make a promise to people. Okay. Now you're a politician, you make a lot of promises. I'll give you that. But you have to come out and say codifying Roe versus Wade or codifying the protections under Roe will be the law of the land and end this discussion finally, right? And say, no, this is now a law. Give me the Senate, give me the House, let me put it through Congress, let me get it passed. You know, give me that mandate because this is one of the crucial components of our lifetime, for if you want to call it that. Because if the man gets in, that's it. We're not going back. You know, that conversation is over. We have a corrupted Supreme Court that started the process. He's going to finish it. Okay. So utilize his words against him. Okay. I
Right.
would I would make him talk, and then I would every time he says something, I'm like, oh, but you were the guy that said this. I would jab him with his own information, because as the saying goes, there's always a tweet, there's always a statement, there's always video or recording of him saying something and then him saying, "Oh, I never said that." Well, no, you did. It's right here. Look at it. So that's how I think Biden will major points with the people that are kind of in the middle and they're not sure.
Right. That's a big agenda, perhaps for the first debate.
Yeah,
So
oh
he'll
no,
have
for
to know
sure.
how he's laying it out, and it's a matter too of how Trump responds. But one thing in this debate is that he's not going to have the facility of just talking over the other candidate because his mic will be muted. That's one. And two, he won't have an audience inside there egging him on. So, Biden might be able to get through more of that, what is on his mind,
Yeah.
than he would normally if there was this back and forth.
Yeah, because he can't, he's a child, right? Like the man he's a child.
Yeah,
He's like, when you're having an argument with your younger brother or you're on the schoolyard, that's his environment. When it's controlled, he shrinks.
he doesn't like controls.
Yeah, because
He
if
doesn't.
he's not the one, the loudest person in the room, and this is what's gonna cause. I hate to cut into Carl your time here, but I have a
That's
thought
okay,
too.
Glenn.
I have a strong suspicion that at the last minute, he'll probably just not even go. He'll just say, "No, I'm not doing this."
I've had
You
that
know,
thought. I've had that
because
thought.
yeah, because when he really thinks about it, he's already backpedaling. It's rigged. Joe's gonna be on drugs because everybody saw Joe at the State of the Union. They were shocked that this man was so
Yep.
powerful in his message, right?
Um,
They could not believe who it was talking. Meanwhile, they were calling him Sleepy Joe this whole time, and he showed them, "Oh yeah, well I'll show you what Sleepy Joe can do."
and
Yeah.
All right.
not to
Yes, Carl,
mention
go
too,
ahead.
when at that State of the Union, Joe Biden challenged people that was challenging him literally on the scene, which was something that was not something normally seen from Joe, which
Right.
illustrated how strong and committed he is and can take them on at their own level if that needed to be. So, there was a lot of surprises from their part where Joe Biden is concerned. And I think, again, where this new debates coming up, they're going to see a lot of that where Joe's concerned. There's
That's
going to
that
be,
old fight, that Irish fight in them.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah,
And
yes.
Carl, what's your thought if he doesn't turn up? What should Biden do?
Well, I think he should stick to somewhat similar what Brian was doing.
Yeah.
Stick
Then he'll have
to,
a lot of
that's
time.
right. Oh
Mhm.
yes. Well, I think Trump has no choice but to show up. I mean, there's that old Caribbean statement of how it's going to look if he doesn't. It'll look worse. It's going to look worse for him if he doesn't. But
Yes.
but then again, his base will still remain his base. But I think Joe Biden, if he sticks to those points that Brian brought up, which I thought was excellent, he's got a foundation to work off of.
Mhm.
More than he. There's not enough time in the debate for
Mhm.
all of the things that Joe can bring up. And I'm sure that right now they're lining them up to illustrate whatever Trump says to counter it.
Yeah,
And so he's got a lot of ammunition.
yeah. I would come out and call him convict. That's what I would do. What was that, convict? I'm sorry,
I,
convict. Can
I,
you repeat yourself? Yeah.
I was thinking that one of the things that Biden could do when you mentioned that point about him being a convict,
Mhm.
uh, that Biden should find some way of mentioning. He doesn't have to call people's name, but there's a litany of people that have been brought down because of their association with Trump. There's a common denominator about this man
Mhm.
that if people get too close to him, you know, they get brought down. Look what is happening
Mhm.
now with some of these guys.
Mhm.
Some of them are losing their livelihood, their law licenses, some
Yeah.
going to prison. and there's just one common denominator in the center of it all.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah.
And I would turn to him and say, Mr. Trump,
Mhm.
what is wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
Eh? Help me to understand what is wrong with this picture. And now you're trying to tell the nation that, you know, people, the Justice Department has been weaponized against you.
Yeah.
What is so important about you that a whole institution
Mhm.
should see itself as, wanting to, come at you on a personal level?
Yeah.
What's so wrong about this?
Yeah. I
Mr. Trump.
read somewhere today somebody put that he's a political prisoner, and I'm like, well, he's not in prison. Like, what are you talking about? You know, so it's interesting to see how that, like what Carl said, that the base, no matter what he does, will not leave him.
So he won't lose the base.
They'll find some way to rally behind him. And you know, it makes me think about what would drive that, right? And I think what it is a lot of these folks feel that they're part of something, you know, that they're part of a movement, you
Mhm.
know. And I think at some point that fever does break, you know. I think it finally kind of dissipates, you know. But right now, there's so much momentum behind this MAGA movement for the past, call it a decade, right? That a lot of these folks feel that they're winning something, okay? But unfortunately, the reality of the situation is that he sees them as glorified ATM machines, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
because every week he sends out a blast email, give me something, give me that, I need some money. And he's hawking sneakers or, you know, I think now he has a flag with his name across it. Now, when you
Oh,
think of
yeah.
symbolism behind that, it's like here's the American flag with golden letters Trump written across it. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's in the Constitution that you should not be doing that, right? But
And don't forget his Bible.
his Bible, exactly. So you're desecrating these things that people hold dear to them, right? That people have a connection, whether it be spiritually or whether it be politically, and if you have a sense of nationalism, you know that he's tapping into that at its most elementary stages, and then he's creating this narrative. Oh, they're coming after you next,
Right,
right?
right.
Now, if these folks are already engrossed in conspiracy theories, they are listening to, you know, the snake oil salesmen in their local communities, they're prime targets for someone like this, you know? So he sends out his blast emails and he says, hey, they're coming after you. And,
Mhm.
you know, the Democrats are doing all this crazy stuff and drinking, you know, spinal fluid from kids. And it's like, it's cultish, you know, and a lot of folks don't like that terminology, but they're in the cult, so they can't see
Yes, yes.
that they're in the cult, you know. So it's amazing that the only way I think to break that fever is, believe it or not, is compassion. Believe it or not, it's to show
Mhm.
folks in a compassionate way, like, hey,
And some
look,
empathy.
yeah, you got grifted, man. I'm sorry it happens to the best of us, but there's a better way, you know, and pull them out, you know, and that's through education and, you know, long chats, you know, about, hey,
All right.
there's
But
a
if,
better way. So,
but,
All right.
but
We are
here,
coming to the end of the program,
mhm,
unfortunately, but
yeah,
we still have a few minutes.
mhm,
Carl, you have
yeah,
a man?
yeah, I wanted to add into what Brian is also pointing out. And I had mentioned this word the last time we discussed this subject,
Mhm.
and that word was axiology of
Oh, yeah.
most Europeans when we're talking about the highest value in terms of what they cling to, what's their most driving desire, value, and that is in the acquisition of the object. And the acquisition in the object for these Republicans we can talk to them on and bring them as much logic and reason and rationality, and they will not see it. Power is what they're at. Power, pure, unadulterated, raw, uncontrolled power.
That's
Because
right.
whatever happens in this country, they don't care. They see the Democrats destroying it, and they are only comfortable when they're driving that bus and they are completely in control of power. So, and what's maddening to me about it is the fact it is what's driving them through Trump, because they believe through Trump they can reassert themselves and regain what they personally feel that they're losing in their belief system, and that a lot of it is illusionary. It's not really real, but it is a belief. And a belief sometimes is a fact thought to be true, but it has no knowledge or proof. And yet they're believing it. And to get them past a belief is an incredible, difficult challenge for any belief to take it on, to make someone change their minds. And that's what we're up against to some degree. These folks want that power.
I notice a trend. I notice a trend, and it might be an emerging trend in Republican-controlled states. Where they're trying to institute versions of this kind of dictatorial power that you're talking about there. Look at the Ten Commandments in Louisiana.
Yep.
Slap it on. Whether they are Muslims or other church groups, it doesn't matter. It's what we want. It is what you must conform to, because we say the Ten Commandments must be, and no matter what, we have the power. So we're going to institute it. And I think you're going to see more and more of this kind of autocratic behavior on the part of, we've seen some of it, what I said a while ago being one, in the state in Florida, we've seen it with this governor down here. But you're going to see it more and more, I think, in these Republican-controlled states, which is why in my preamble, I hesitated to even talk about the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Because there's no Republican Party, no. What we have is a crust of MAGAism. And you can dignify that and call it Republican when you think of people like Eisenhower, Reagan, and the Bushes, Lincoln, and all these other guys. Theodore Roosevelt. These very strong Republicans. Those are Republicans. What you have now is a crust. And we must not dignify it and call it Republican.
Yeah, it's unrecognizable.
But we have no choice, because it has to be on the ballot as Republican. So we'll still use the word.
Yes.
But we have to know what we're defining. All right, we're gonna bring things to a close, but I want to find out from you both. What advice would you give? What final advice, quickly, would you give to each candidate? And there might be a pitch up, but try.
So for Joe, I would. I think I could
advise it.
Something for Trump. Yeah. I think Joe. I think it's just be his authentic self. People like Joe. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Joe's been in the government for over 50 years, 40 years. Everybody knows Joe. Everybody knows that after all is said and done, obviously he does have his donors that, he definitely has to please his donors, but Joe is a staple in the government, U.S. government, for my entire lifetime. For as long as I know the United States government, since 1982 till today, Joe Biden's been a part of it.
Been there
in some way, So I think he just needs to be his authentic self, and I think he needs to be aggressive when he needs to be aggressive. He doesn't have to come out and be a strong man and be a loud man. I don't think that's
not him.
That's not him. If I had to give, if I was on the other side of this conversation and I had to give Trump some advice, I would try to say to him, less is more, right? The less you say and the more strategic your approach, the better off you come. Now, your message is all over the place. You're talking about sharks and batteries and you know, you're talking about Hannibal Lecter. Let's leave all of that crazy. Let's leave all of that to the rallies, okay? The traveling circus. But for this, I need you to talk about what you did well in your during your first 4 years, okay? And I want you to stay focused on that. Bring that up, and that's what I would tell. You know.
All right, Carl, first to
Well,
Biden.
first with Biden, I would say, Joe, use all the ammunition you have, and use it strategically.
Formative.
You have more than enough.
Mhm.
You probably more than likely will not have the time to use all of what you have, but be strategic with it. I really liked Brian's points of the 3 points of what subject areas he needs to address, because that is giving a foundation and also giving them a remember what we were going through with that pandemic and we all were catching out and how we were dying at numbers and what I had to end up doing to bring us to a steady state to where we are now. So that reality therapy right there and segue into all the other subject areas Brian pointed out. I think if he works with that and he will bring back memory lane because Americans on the whole have short memories. And I think they need a regurgitation of what took place not too long ago. Where Trump is concerned, Trump, Trump is the guy that I know if I was on his side, all of his people are standing there with their fingers crossed, hoping that he doesn't blow a fuse or he doesn't come off step or come off of the game plan. I would check, stay calm, Don, and stay calm. And I think if you can stay calm and speak in that false falsetto you use when you're reading, you're better off being somewhat looking state-like versus your uncontrolled diatribes that you sometimes fall into. So that's where I would be where the two are concerned.
All right. If I were to advise Biden, very quickly, I would say to him, don't allow Trump to get under your skin.
Yes.
And to Trump, I would say, be yourself. Because I know that if he is himself, it's total disaster.
Yeah. It's so true. Yeah, he's unprepared.
Anyway, guys, thanks very much for joining me under the mango tree this evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
I-
Thank you for having me.
We will, of course, we'll be doing this so many more times as we go closer to the election.
Yes.
Sure.
Thanks again for being the persons you are.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, so we bring the program to an end, and we'd just like to thank you again, friends, for joining us and for sharing with us under the mango tree. I wish you a very good night and take care of yourselves. Walk good and keep hydrated. Bye-bye.